What's happening, Wrestling Nation? Coach Kennelly here, coming to you with a new episode from my Solitary Mind of a Madman series. I'm not going to be releasing a full podcast, but I've definitely, like I said, been digesting a lot of content on the internet. This is a place where I feel I can add some value. Today, we're going to talk about the differences I've experienced so far between wrestling and grappling competitions. And I use the term grappling because jiu-jitsu is very mysterious, exclusive. There's lots of different rule sets. The ones I competed in were Naga grappling. And I'm also going to preface this video with saying that I'm a greenhorn. I've only competed at 2 events over the last couple months with grappling. Wrestling, I've been all the way from, the local jamborees for kindergarten kids to senior level events coaching and competing at Masters at that same US Open. So if I miss anything with the grappling, I'm sorry, and it's most likely just because I haven't seen it yet or I haven't experienced it yet on the internet. Hopefully somebody with this video or I find some of these things along the way, because I think there's a lot of cross-promotion that these groups could do that can help each other out. We can make the competitions better for everybody, and I think a lot of these people compete in both or should be competing in both if you're not already yet. So since all sports are good and wrestling is king, we're going to break it down with some of the wrestling strengths that I believe they hold through their competitions. And I could see I use my blue pen and it's not very great. So in my next couple of videos, I'll get better markers so you can see the stuff. But some strengths we got with wrestling is our streaming platforms. It's way easier to watch wrestling matches from the local level, whether they're being streamed on a Facebook or YouTube page, a Rockfin page, Flow Wrestling. They're actually doing local high school events and things now. So it's very easily for me now to find wrestling I want to watch all the way to overseas. I'll watch the Yasser Doe in the middle of the night or things like that where, Jordan Burroughs is competing to try to get that Olympic spot. And I'll be able to, even the Euros are competing to try to get their Olympic spot. The Oceanias, I'll be able to watch all that now. And wrestling has a lot of platforms that are spreading the message. I'm part of those wrestling platforms with this YouTube page. That was the reason I got into it. And I think jiu-jitsu is a little bit behind the times on those, or I just haven't found them yet. So if you know any good jiu-jitsu streaming platforms where I can watch stuff on, I'll check it out. I got the Flow Grappling account. I watch a lot of YouTube so far. Some of my favorites have been Craig Jones, Keenan Cornelius. Kama Jiu-Jitsu makes a lot of great videos. That's where I kind of got this school time vibe, especially me being a school teacher as my day job and trade made it a little easier. So I think wrestling, we're far ahead in our streaming, and I think jiu-jitsu could up its game there and it'll help get some value. So like even when I competed, it was hard for me to let people watch me live in real time. I had to record them, put it on YouTube, woo. They got to see it, but it wasn't that easy for that, layman person like myself who's just looking to watch one of my friends compete jiu-jitsu or, teammates, something like that. Podium procedures in wrestling, we're a lot better there. At the end of the tournament, these are long days. That's one of the reasons I made this video. I think the wrestling tournament is way too long of a day and we could do it better. But at the end of it, we all come together. The announcer, Shane, has taken first place. Jalen's taken second. Jarvis taken third, and so on. They bring you up. You stand there. You get this. You do your little smile. Maybe you flex on the podium. You get your medal, your little one, your bracket, whatever you do. And everybody stands there. They take photos. It's really procedurally done, and it's very easy to do. In my first jiu-jitsu competition, I didn't have that same experience. After my matches, I won. I see people walk around with belts, medals, swords, and stuff. And I'm like, hey, how did you get that belt? The guy's like, oh, yeah, after you win, you just go here, check in, woo. So I went to the table, got my medal. And luckily, I seen one of the guys came stood on the podium with me, but it was all stuff I had to initiate on my own. They never said, hey, here's a 155 lightweight masters class, come get your medals, which I was used to at wrestling. So that's something, maybe I just was too local to see it. It probably gets better, but I've seen IBJJFs. I watched the Daisy Fresh crew, and I've seen them with open spots on the podium too. So I don't know if the guys are just bad sports, injured, or jiu-jitsu is a little behind on its podium placements. And that's something I think wrestling does really well. Great photo ops, great promotions for all those people, because making a podium is hard work. And it almost looked like those things they set up where you take a photo by like, hey, here's my cool photo, I'm on the trip, and everybody gets on the podium, you take pictures with your team and stuff. So maybe it's a little different than wrestling, but I really like the wrestling podium procedure a lot better. Pricing's way cheaper to wrestling. Now, granted, there's some different barriers to entry I'll get into in the jiu-jitsu side, but it is a lot cheaper just to get into a random wrestling tournament than to be able to enter a jiu-jitsu tournament. There are some cheaper ones, but there's definitely some pricey stuff on. I've seen wrestling is a lot cheaper, more efficient to get into, so that's why I have a jiu-jitsu gym is actually sending some people to some wrestling to get some extra work in and try to work it out like that. And keep those local tournaments fun. Fundraisers, pack the mats, get the kids in and out, freestyle, Greco, folk style, beach wrestling. It's all beautiful. Let's keep those prices low. Wrestling, small, egalitarian process is what I like to wrestle. You could show up, just your body, maybe some wrestling shoes and scrap. And once you get on the mat, everything's equal. Let's never lose that. Challenge bricks. I think I've never seen them in jiu-jitsu, but I love them in wrestling with consequences. I don't like the YOLO bricks where the coaches can just throw them, or you're a low-level coach. You don't really have the knowledge when to throw a brick or what to do with a brick once you throw it. So I like that there's some skin in the game where I don't like exactly the athlete lose points, but it makes you think as a coach, like, am I going to throw this brick? Is that person going to lose a point and gain a point? And you really have to gauge instead of just throwing bricks, which can slow down, make these long days of wrestling go even longer. If the coach is like, oh, my guy's going to eliminate, he's the last one I got, throw it. And that just trickles into 100 coaches and it gets overwhelming. But I do think the challenge bricks is a good thing with wrestling. And I also think that we should keep them and expand upon them with consequences in reasonable ways, law and order type of deal. And lastly, concessions. So for the wrestling, concessions are just better. They got coaches' rooms, things like that. And I just haven't experienced enough of the jiu-jitsu world to see a good coach's room, a good spread of the concession stand. They've all been pretty basic. So that's another strength we got at wrestling. But there is some things in the jiu-jitsu world we could be doing better. Some of those things jiu-jitsu does really well is fight time. So when I went on that jiu-jitsu card, they said I'll be competing at 4:45 p.m. So I didn't have to show up till about 3:30, 4 o'clock, get my little warm-up in, get ready to go. And the times change. So if matches are going quick, that 4:45 might have moved up to 4:15. If they're going slow, it might have moved down to 5 o'clock. But you have an ideal window that you're competing in. And I've seen some wrestling tournaments do that, but we should definitely expand on it because that smooth comp thing, I don't know why we can't use that in wrestling and why we are not using it in wrestling. This one seems like a no-brainer to me. I've seen age group things work well with wrestling. We're like 10 to 12, got this 2-hour window, but we need to get people out of these gyms on the long 7-hour Saturdays to increase retention and participation in this sport that we all love. So fight times are a beautiful thing in jiu-jitsu, and I'd like to see that incorporated into our wrestling world. With that, they finished the bracket to completion, where I'm still not sure whether I like or not like being a little old. My gas tank's not the best. But once you get on that mat, you wrestle all the way through with your group. So your whole bracket, you're in and out in probably 45 minutes to an hour, which is great. I don't know if we could do that in wrestling, especially with the big brackets. But something to consider to just maybe get a few things moving, a couple matches in a row. I like off-season to do about a 15-minute wait. I think 45 is good, but a little too long. Some of these young kids, they bounce back right away. And you think in a practice, you might do 4 or 5 practice matches in a row, so there's no reason that we can't, run that back to back. We might not get as good a product because gas takes this and that, but wrestlers are resilient. They go through adversity. I think we could figure it out, but I'm not sure if we need to bring that one in. But it's just a cool thing jiu-jitsu does different, which I thought was notable, especially in this video. It was a different perspective switch. I'd like to do a match, wait around, nap, rehydrate, whatever. Warm up, do another one, or this one, do a match, lay down and die, come back up, do a match, get a little rehydrated, die a little bit, come back up, do another match, and so on. And obviously the bigger the bracket, the harder that is to do. But for smaller brackets, your local jamborees and things like that, it could work. So let's think out the box and try some stuff. Out of bounds. This is one that almost could be a no-brainer right away to wrestling too. When you go out of bounds jiu-jitsu, if I start on top of you like side control or I'm in a mount, we go out of bounds, I'm going to start on top of you in side control, or I'm going to start on top of you in the mount. The referee will stop, you'll break. Sometimes you'll even crawl back, weed back. We don't need to be on our backs in wrestling, but get back to the same position. So if I'm pinning somebody out of bounds, we go out in wrestling, they restart in probably the bottom position, or something like that, and I'm start on top. Let's restart. When they crawl out of bounds, that's not the safety net anymore. You're on your back in the middle. Whistle blows, let's start from there. I think that's something that's really cool we could bring into wrestling, and I think we should bring that in sooner than later. And I really don't see a negative to that because you're working so hard, you're wrestling to achieve that position. When you get it, you should be rewarded. And I definitely think a lot of people are trying to not make this out of bounds a safety net, similar to your freestyle and Greco with the step out points, but I think a reset of position would be great to bring it back in the middle as well. Another thing jiu-jitsu does that's smarter, and shout out to FRL for discussing this, is they have a smaller wrestling, has a bigger competition, which I like, and that's better. We got a big circle, but they have squares on squares. I would like to just see the whole wrestling mat That's the inbounds. And, obviously we have to discourage the stalling, running away, things like that. But definitely I see like senior level guys where you can finish your techniques out of bounds, to these big college boys like a Hidley, he needs 2 mats to wrestle on. So I think we should definitely give these kids ample room, the ones that are getting after and competing, to finish their techniques and let them go. I don't see any reasoning besides space constraints, maybe for finals, things like that, increase the size of the mat, or anywhere where we really could make the mat bigger, put a square on a square, because when we put that circle on a square, we're losing a lot of that space, and it's for safety, but I think we could have more athletic actions going on, and we could have more moves and techniques finished, which is what we're all really looking for, or should be looking for during a wrestling match. Barriers to entry. I think that there's a lot less barriers to entry when I wanted to go into a jiu-jitsu tournament. If I had the money, I could go into that jiu-jitsu tournament. I needed to be affiliated with a school, but I probably could have wrote like unknown or something like that, and I needed to write my belt skill level, which I'll talk about next. But there was really smart. I didn't need to buy a card, USA Wrestling card to get in. I didn't need to take any classes to get in. They're like, hey, you ready to scrap? You know the rules? Or I didn't even read the rules. And you shake hands, we're both agreeing to the same thing, and you get after it. Wrestling has a lot of good things with the safe sports, USAs, but it does make some barriers to entry financially and time-wise. So they're good things to have in place, but maybe they could be streamlined, make them a little easier, things like that, to get more people involved, more people participating in the sport, instead of just taking these classes that, especially online, they aren't that effective. I mean, we still got creeps in wrestling. There's going to be, whenever you get a big enough group of people, there'll be some bad characters in that. But the good community should work together to get them out instead of just bogging us down with these stupid safe sports. I shouldn't say stupid, but time-consuming to me. They're very obvious, but a lot of people fail them, and it's a strange thing we got to do, but it's something we got to do. And the worst part about that, on a tangent, I've seen safe sport that hasn't had much teeth to dig into people after the fact, that a lot of people it's hard to bust these pedophiles because they're so good at hiding their stuff on the internet. That safe sport is really a toothless thing, and the community needs to weed them out ourselves. We see these people at events. Don't make them comfortable. If you're filming one of my kids and I don't know you, you're not a media, I'm going to question that. And if you don't have a good reason for doing that, then there's probably going to be consequences. And for the sake of incriminating myself or any of my associates, those consequences will be how it is. F around and find out. If you want to try to make a creepy video with somebody I know or somebody I don't know, as a matter of fact, I don't want anybody having those creepy videos on there. And another thing jiu-jitsu has is better competition gear. I went shirtless in these small little shorts. There was people wrapped head to toe in long rash guards and pants. Lots of options. I love a singlet. Not everybody does. 2 pieces are in. All that stupid stuff about your fingers will get caught or this or that, that's all just old people being strange. I've been around wrestling 20 odd years and never had a problem with any article of clothing it was. And I grew up in the 90s where I wrestled in baggy clothes like I was on the frickin' Chicago Bulls or something like that. So miss me with all that clothes BS. Let's get a little update in our gear and let people express themselves and put on a little flavor and stuff like that, but not force everybody, especially with the creepy videos going around when I throw a pair of shorts, so your hog's not hanging out there for some pervs to look at on the internet, and especially little hogs and stuff like that. So there are things I think about, especially bringing children into this world. Jiu-jitsu is way ahead of us. Their gear is way cooler. The gi sucks, the pajamas, whatever. I'm talking no gi stuff, but even the gi has its place, probably just like the singlet to the traditionalists. And last but not least, something in the jiu-jitsu world that I don't know if we should bring in the wrestling world, but I think it's worth talking about, is belt level competitions. Something I love about wrestling, like when I first joined jiu-jitsu, I signed up, I got to do the white belt thing, the dance. I can't go in and beat the best person in the gym that day. I wouldn't have the skills to anyway, but even if I was the man, like that outlier, that superstar, I could come in. I don't know if I could sign up for the black belt division. Maybe. I probably could, to be honest, but I don't know. Where in wrestling, you could test yourself against some of those best right away. Like I couldn't get to the ADCC without getting to the qualifier first and making my way there, where there's a lot of different opportunities to kind of find the best person in your city, your state, your country with wrestling, and get a match against them without being like a necessarily bout rank type of person. I don't know if it's right or wrong. It helps. I do like competitions, and here locally, like, hey, we'll put beginners together, intermediate, advanced, and I think that's how it should be, to try to get the best matches you could, especially in the off season. I don't want to see a state qualifier wrestling a kid who's been doing it 2 weeks, because nobody's getting better in that scenario. So I do like skill-based matchups, but I think that both those worlds could find some. There's somewhere in the middle that it's got to work out. Neither one of them has it quite right yet, but jiu-jitsu is a little further along. So to wrap this all up, I've loved competing in both. I'm going to compete in some more. I've got a folk style. Folk style to me sucks, but is also my best style. And I'm going to have to embrace all styles of wrestling. So I got one of those on the books, and a grappling event will be coming up soon. So I appreciate you watching. Drop some stuff in the comments, some stuff I missed maybe, or maybe some things you agree with, disagree with about the jiu-jitsu versus wrestling competition. And let's talk about it. Let's grow together, and let's try to get 1% better. As always, you could be anywhere in the world right now. You watching this, and this means a lot to me. So it's going to be peace and much love to you.